Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of Health and Tech. We're going to be starting a series this time all about stress management. And I think it's an important one. It's one Amanda believes in, and she is the coach. So, Amanda, talk to us about managing stress and all those types of things.
Well, thanks, JD. I would be remiss to say that I am just a coach in this. I am also a sufferer and an avid work in progress because I don't
And a
think that there's
CEO.
a yes. I don't think that there's one method of stress management. And what I really want to get into is some details about stress that we may not know. Because in my experience, especially if a doctor tells you, oh, in order to manage this, you need to better manage your stress. Okay, how? Right? Especially in tech. It's like, how are you supposed to manage stress when you're supposed to be managing all of these other things?
Well, and I think that managing stress is something that people, one, don't take seriously enough. And two, there's some misconceptions about it. A good example is, how do you manage stress? Well, I run. Yuri, our buddy Yuri, right? He runs. Now, absolutely, appropriate exercise can help with stress, but it seems like it kind of helps at the moment, right? Whereas there's probably better ways to handle it as a whole. For example, boundaries.
Which we have not gotten into boundaries yet. That's a whole other beast. Um, but yeah, I mean, to your point, there are definitely methods of managing certain stressors in our lives. Exercise is one of them because it does something like release endorphins, and so your body can better process things. But it's almost like you're treating the symptoms of stress with a habit, and a lot of those habits are really good for you, like exercise, or like getting outside in nature. I think they call it earthing these days. Um, I call it being outside, but, whatever
I
makes
call
it
it
into a
home.
fad, I guess. Yeah. Um, but there's this I feel like we're missing something, and that's why we're starting this today, because I think we need to take a step back and we need to look at what's underneath, because in order to solve a problem, to really get to the root of stress management, we need to look at what's going on underneath. Where is this issue coming from? And while that can be its own thing, and I'm not saying like dive into your early childhood trauma, I am saying let's get into the nerdy, dirty business of looking at your telomeres.
Okay, so let's talk about the telomeres here because that sounds like some Scientology cult bullshit. So what is a telomere?
I did not know, actually. I've done a lot of neuroscience, education and behavior science education because of coaching, but recently, because of developing the Wellness OS, I got into further educating myself on why do certain people age more and more rapidly than others, and why are certain people more inclined to have things like autoimmune conditions or chronic illness at younger ages. And what I found is this amazing book that I had next to me and disappeared, called The Telomere Effect, and it's by a Nobel Prize winner. And it's just the to actually get back to answering your question, because I'm so passionate about this, telomeres are they are the repeating segments of non-coding DNA that live at the end of your chromosomes. And to put that in English, it's if you think about a tennis shoelace, the very end where there's that little tiny plastic piece, it's called an aglet, which I also didn't know. And that is basically what a telomere is for your cell.
Okay, so I want to back up here for a second because you do nerd out about this stuff. But I want to give some qualifiers here because you brought up a couple of things, chronic conditions. You brought up autoimmune issues, especially at young ages. You brought up, why do we die young? Okay. All of these are related to the telomeres, but I think that there's something that you should share, which might be a vulnerability point for you, but that you should share about yourself that gives you a little bit more foundation as to why not only is this important to others, but to yourself.
Oh, well, there's so many things. You just opened
Well,
up, like, should I just start spilling all my
well, I was kind
vulnerabilities?
of thinking, the autoimmune, the chronic, the hypermobile, all that stuff. So why don't we share a little bit about who you are in the science of this and why it's passionate for you beyond helping people.
Okay. Well, revving up here.
Hey, I t- gotta fill we gotta fill the episode. So,
Um, okay, so the short version is I think the short version I hope the short version is in 2020, I was diagnosed with, fibromyalgia mast cell activation syndrome, which basically means that my cells decide whether I'm allergic to something or not, depending on how they're feeling.
hold on, let's
And that
stop.
app
Let's stop on that one because that one's interesting for a lot of. I think that a lot of people. One, it's so rare, right? So as I understand it, because we've been doing this for years now, the mast cell activation syndrome in a general world, you're either allergic to something like food or you're allergic to something environmental like pollen. Okay. You are allergic to whatever your body decides to be allergic to at the moment.
my allergist called me a broken seesaw.
Yes, because you go between both sides at any given point. And anyway, so that's an autoimmune condition that you have. Don't you? There's also, and I'm not sure on the relation here, but fibromyalgia as well as CFS.
So there are symptoms of fibromyalgia that are aligned with chronic fatigue syndrome. So I have significant issues with fatigue. It is not chronic fatigue syndrome, though. And there's a big, beautiful word for chronic fatigue syndrome that I'm forgetting at the moment, but it has a lot of syllables. Um, and then also, I'm hypermobile. And hypermobility is something that you'd be like, oh, she's double jointed. Well, actually, over time, it causes 24/7 pain, and a whole lot of issues because your joints don't work, and so then your muscles have to do all of the work because your joints are just, like, out partying somewhere else, and it causes a lot of agony, really, um, but,
So I, I
I was
I'm sorry. I want to make this real for people. Because I don't, a lot of people, it's really easy as people are watching an episode like this, like, oh, she's got fibromyalgia. Okay. Well, what the hell is that? Well, number one, it's a neurological condition. And correct me if I say anything wrong. It's a neurological condition that mostly affects women. And, for folks out there, what this means is that there are days when a feather crossing her skin is painful. Okay, so it's a kind of a real deal, and in terms of the hypermobility, I mean, MCAS is just annoying and obnoxious, right? We have to watch your food, we gotta, make sure you're on antihistamines and all that type of stuff, but in the hypermobility we all knew the kid in school that could do weird things with his thumb or whatever, but this is a little different. This is if we go around a corner in the car and let's say the corner says max speed 40 miles an hour. If I hit that corner at 40 miles an hour, you may just randomly dislocate 3 ribs. Just boom, dislocated ribs. So that's why these things are so important is that it's much more real than the abstract idea of, oh, she's just flexible or, oh, she's got fibromyalgia. I've heard of that. These are very real conditions. And it's one of the reasons why she has such a passion outside of just being a general nerd for all this science stuff around it, because they're all kind of tied into the autoimmune issue. So I'll get off my soapbox and let you continue, Amanda, but I really I want people to understand that this is not just some abstract thing for you.
I appreciate that. I also appreciate taking the time to add validity to conditions, mine, but also other people's, because a lot of things are rare and a lot of things are considered invisible illnesses, right?
Well, it's like the
Just
shopping for
because,
zebras, right?
yeah,
Yeah, hunting for
and
zebras.
for those, I don't want to shop for one. For those who don't know, the zebra is essentially the symbol for odd or unique conditions, things that aren't normal, things that doctors don't automatically think of. And so when he says hunting for zebras, it takes a special kind of doctor when you come in with odd symptoms to think outside the box. And when you do, you often find zebras, not horses. And horses
Right.
are what you expect when you hear hoofbeats. But sometimes it's an odd looking zebra, or an okapi. Look that up. That's entertaining. Um, but back to the point, invisible illnesses are real, and that isn't the point of uh, this podcast, but what we don't tend to realize is that stress, especially prolonged stress, not just acute, every once in a while stress, leads to things that your body cannot get rid of. And yes, I got started down this deep nerd pathway about 5 years ago or so because I was diagnosed with a variety of things and they kept saying the word chronic. And I really didn't know how to process that. And I was still raising kids at the time. And I didn't there's no solution, right? It says in order to make this better, you manage your stress, you get better sleep, you hydrate. And when you're running a company and you're raising kids and you're a partner and you have other things that you do in life, all those requirements, it's really hard to put the priority on yourself. And it's really, really hard to manage stress in a stress-inducing world.
So with the stress, let's get back to the telomeres, because I think it's such a fascinating topic. And like I said, I mean, when you just say the term, you're thinking, what kind of Scientology cult crap is this? But like you mentioned, this gal, I mean, she won a Nobel Prize for her research into this DNA, and not, I guess it's not an anomaly, but DNA feature. Yeah, right. So this isn't social science where most of the studies in social science are usually found to be false. This is a deep science. This is a hard science. This is the science that, as they continue to evolve their knowledge and manipulation of it, could actually extend our lives.
Mhm. And that's a really cool thing about telomeres is that if you dig into the science, and we're going to get into it a little bit, you find ways to be able to extend your life. The important thing about telomeres is that our cells divide, right, as they evolve, as they age, and telomeres determine basically how fast they divide, and then how fast they die. And if you run out of cells, you're not really upright anymore.
You might be, but then you're Stalin and you've been stuffed. Or was that Lenin? I don't remember if
The
it was Stalin or Lenin. But anyway, my autism is showing. Um, okay, so let's continue with this. We're talking about cell division and the telomeres, and the longer the telomere is, that how is that? How does this relate to stress?
So it relates to stress in that the longer your telomere, the end cap to your shoelace, right? That securing feature, the longer your lifespan. And science has also shown that we have a lot of input into how fast that happens. So the shorter, the more stress, TLDR, the shorter our telomeres, which means our disease span increases. What that
Okay,
means,
so you threw stress out there though. So what you're saying is that your telomeres can be shortened by stress,
yes,
and therefore that equates to is a metaphor for short telomeres equals shorter life. Shorter life equals less experience with the people and things you hold most dear.
yes.
Okay, your turn.
I feel like the interaction between the main guy in Grace in Project Hail Mary and Rocky, and how it's just going at each other, but one is really trying to keep the other one in line, and he's just off like question, question, question. So, why I get so excited about this as somebody who suffers from all kinds of different things is because I have control over contributing or taking away from the length of my telomeres. And for someone who has a high stress lifestyle, when you run a company, when you do nonprofit work, when you try to have a community, when you run a homestead, I mean, all of those types of things, they add weight. And the stress it's high. And I got super excited by this because I just, sometimes when somebody throws the word chronic at you, or that you have to do something that you don't know how to do, like manage stress. And then, you're full of those, I don't know how to do this feelings. And then you get something like the telomere effect, which is all science saying that you have the ability to control how you respond to stress, and how you have the ability to control um, your emotions when it comes to certain things, and therefore you can contribute to a better life that is longer because you are nourishing your telomeres instead of detracting from them.
So, something you touched on, which I want to be clear on, is it possible throughout life to extend the length of the telomere, or is it a fixed length that shortens through effect?
So they actually originally thought it was a fixed amount, but then they did a whole bunch of experiments with pond scum of all things, and
Hey,
then applied that to telomeres and found out that yes, they can regrow. It's a thing called, I'm probably not going to be able to pronounce this right, but telomeres, and it's where it rebuilds
Telemundo.
itself. It
Okay, no,
rebuilds
now
itself.
this is particularly interesting because what you've just said is, okay, folks, you could have had a shitty childhood, you could have had a shitty 20s, you kind of figured out how to be a human being in the 30s, and you've set some boundaries, maybe took into your 40s, but all of a sudden through lifestyle changes, you're able to extend your life genetically, essentially, by practicing things that will help your body essentially heal, right? Internally. We're not talking about, oh, I've got a scrape and your skin, comes together and forms a scar. We're talking about actual DNA level restructuring or growth, and therefore moving your life forward maybe a day or two or whatever.
Mhm. And one of the ways that this book specifically goes into this, like demonstrating this in our day to day life, is think about those people that you know that look 10 years older than they are. Those individuals typically will have shorter telomeres. And there's been all kinds of studies that have showed this. Also, people who are under a huge amount of stress. Think about those who caretake for, say, an autistic child. The people who have to be on call 24/7 when it comes to caring for another individual, their telomeres have been proven to be shorter. The flip side is that they can be with attention and, like coming back to the big picture of paying attention to how is this actually affecting me, they can be regrown
through stress management.
through stress management.
All right, folks. This has been another episode of Health and Tech. Again, this is going to be a series on stress management. So even if you don't like us for other things, you might want to tune in for this. I do have one closing thought, and that is protect your peace, own your time.